Hello there! In this video I want to present to you the ups and downs I had with this bike. It's a 1989 Koga Miyata Terra Runner in size 58, so the biggest size. The Terra Runner was Koga Miyata's second to top steel mountain bike that year, only second to the Ridge Runner, and used their famous Hardlight FM1 steel. To learn more about this steel, it's worth checking out one of the original catalogs. As you can see here right away, the catalog is full with information about the steel that is used for the frames and also how the frames are manufactured. And in the end also how the steel is made, because Miyata made their own steel. I'm taking a look at the Miyata catalog, the English version, because for the Koga Miyata, so the Dutch-Japanese corporation, there's only a Dutch catalog, unfortunately. So here I've scrolled a bit and arrived at the Ridge Runner, the top model, and then the Terra Runner. This bicycle will dust off a lot of challengers who underrate the advantages Terra gives you. Full chromoly frame and fork, spline, triple butted tubes, frisky geometry as steep as the top competition bikes. Combine this intelligent frame with precision Shimano Dior components and aggressive fat tires, and you'll be in front for a long time. A little bit of a wacky text in my opinion, also using quite negative words like aggressiveness for something as positive as cycling. Anyways, more interesting bikes and surprisingly a lot of 26-inch mountain bikes, and then beautiful randonneur bikes. These are so rare. And then more stuff, and at the bottom of this little magazine were the information about parts and also the frame materials. And this is what I also found interesting. So this is a very detailed catalog, maybe second only to the very fancy and detailed Bridgestone catalogs from that time. And what I was particularly interested in was the material of the chainstays, whether that was also chromo or high tensible, so normal steel. And unfortunately, the chainstays and the seat stays were only chromo for the top model, and for the Terra Runner they were apparently normal steel. A bit of a pity for me to read. I thought the second to top model was also full chromo, but I think it's fine. Honestly, it doesn't make the frame much or the bike much heavier apparently, and I think it's still a very high quality frame, with the main triangle being this Koga Miyata Hardlight FM1 steel. So let's take a closer look at the bike. I bought it for 70 euros in Munich, and I'm not sure whether this was a good deal. The frame and also all the parts are covered in rust, and also some kind of, how to say, particles left over from some gasoline engine probably. So many aluminum parts look corroded, and yeah, overall I thought the frame looked quite pitiful. I was happy with the tire clearance. As you have just seen here, this frame clears 2.1 inch, 2.15 inch tires or 54 to 55 millimeter measuring tires in the rear, and I was not expecting this. I thought the chainstays at Koga Miyata frames are typically quite narrow in the rear, at least the ones starting from 87 or so. But here, at least we get these sweet tire sizes in there. In the front here we have a lot of rust, so under the nice Koga Miyata head badge, as you can see here. Very unfortunate. Still the very nice purple paint shines at some points. I love this purple. Yeah, and look at the brakes here. They are black. Normally they should be silver. I don't know what happened there. Maybe you can explain it to me. Also, the hub looks terrible. So, before starting working on this bike, I was a bit frustrated and demotivated already. I mean, it's a nice challenge, but it's also a lot of work to attempt to restore a bike like this. So I have huge respect for other YouTubers like Toasty Rides, who has done this multiple times already, and also to all of you out there, of which I don't know the stories, who also do that. Here again the sticker. Miyata did their own tubing, in contrast to most of, or maybe all of the other bike manufacturers, so very interesting. I think overall the paint job still looks good. I mean, quite well used and worn, but no dents, no big scratches like where the whole paint is gone. So I think there's still potential. And I like this Leo print. These frames are actually quite rare, as I have been told. Earlier this year, some guy bought my 1987 Ridge Runner, which was a size 54, so a bit too small for me, and he told me this must have probably been sold only 10 times for each size in Germany back in 87, so quite rare. Also considering how many of these frames might be lost already after 35 years, almost 40 years. I mean, if we talk about old mountain bikes, like really old, from mid-80s, that was the starting time of them in Germany, as far as I know. Sure, they had been around by then for multiple years in the US, particularly in California, but in Germany, that was the starting time. So they must have been still something quite new and exotic, and probably not many of them were ordered and then also sold during the first years. Maybe of this 89 version there were 100 ones of every size in Germany? Maybe. I saw at least 2 other Terra Runners in this purple in 58. One for sale and one just in a forum. Yeah, anyways, so the old pedals still are spinning fine, and I think from now on we want to go over to taking everything apart and then cleaning the frame. First of all, I wanted to find something out. Who manufactured these handlebars here? The black is fading already and looking a bit purple, which suits the overall look of the frame, but I don't like these handlebars so much. They're just too straight. So, what are we seeing here? Oh, that's an N. Can you tell me what that is? Or maybe it's an M, I don't know. Let's make a guess. Maybe M for Miyata? Oh, it's a Nitto! Wow! The best bicycle component manufacturer in the world, arguably. Nice. Alright, let's take it all apart. So that's what I did outside. And this footage was still recorded in summer, so it's quite some time ago. Here you can see the individual parts. Unfortunately, many parts look really bad, again with this black gunk, filth, whatever on them, which also looked hard to remove. But still very nice components. A whole or complete MT62 Dior group from, I think, introduced in 1988. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, please. The front hub looks really terrible, so I immediately took out the axle and the bearings. It was the first time I removed an axle, actually. Then I cleaned the frame with brake cleaner and some old muck-off frame cleaning spray I still had. Despite the rust spots after the cleaning, I was very satisfied with the result. Oh, and as you can see here, at that point I also got some new tires. These were 15 euros Schwalbe Big Ben tires, the active line, so the most basic line by Schwalbe, but I still think these tires are fine and the color matches the purple very well and the rust spots. As you can see here, the purple is shining again, also on the fork. By the way, I think this is a great looking fork with quite thick fork blades. Of course from Miyata Hardlight FM1 Chromo. Oh yeah, and you can see the leftovers I got off from the frame on this poor sponge. And then I took the bike back to the basement for cleaning of parts and reassembly. As you might note, I've been working on this bike over a long time, like multiple months. Some hours here, some hours there. And I think these tires match the frame so well. A colleague at work told me that they don't fit together so nice. For him it pops too much. He rather has subtle colors. But I like them. Yeah, and these tires have a good width of 55 millimeters. And the Araya rims are just beautiful. I can't mention often enough that I'm a big fan of old Araya rims, especially the double-walled ones, so RM20 and the almighty RM25, which I think is the greatest vintage rim out there. These are the gold label RM20s, and they're 20 millimeters internal width and 27 to 28 millimeters external width, so a good width for 26-inch rims. No comparison to later very narrow rims. And as you can see here, the U-brake and the chainstays barely clear this 2.15-inch tire. I had different parts waiting all over the place, like an XT derailleur in case I couldn't fix up the old derailleur anymore, a new bottom bracket of course to replace the non-sealed one. The original wheel was still waiting for a new axle and new bearings of course, the old ones were gone. But I was so much in doubt whether I would be able to clean this hub and also the filthy spokes to be shiny. Here are some original MT62 brake levers and shifters. I think these old shifters are great, but as Red, famous British vintage bicycle YouTuber, pointed out in one video, they have one big flaw, and that is if their little steel plate they're sitting on only bends the tiniest bit, they can be incredibly hard to shift, and that's so annoying. Otherwise great shifters. Down there are the parts for an XTU brake with booster, the BR M733, and I like these U-brakes with booster. I think they brake just great and you can easily block the rear wheel with them. Much harder to do with cantilevers in the rear, in my opinion. Yeah, and once more I have to tell you I'm in love with old Araya rims. I'm also wondering if one could run them tubeless even, with tubeless rim tape. I wonder if anybody has ever tried this out. So, a good basis here, and now to the assembly. Or maybe cleaning first. All the parts have to be cleaned first, otherwise I can't put them back on this beautiful frame. So, at the point of recording this video, my go-to cleaning solution was brake cleaner and maybe metal polish paste afterwards. Let me know in the comment section if you have other tips. I already received some recommendations after my last video about the unland sable with sticky dried down old grease. But yeah, here at this point I didn't have the knowledge yet. Now to the cleaning orgy. Cleaning evening was somewhere in late November, and being excited about putting everything back together at the same evening, I also brought all the new parts for the build downstairs with me that evening. So a nice Brooks flyer saddle, some grips that match the saddle and the tires, and new cables and brake pads and so on. For cleaning I had to decide between two cassettes I had waiting. One from the Untitled Sable, the other one from the Koga Miyata Terra Runner, but I decided to use the original one. And here are the other parts waiting for cleaning. I decided to start with something easy, the front derailleur, and after some polishing and an already dirty rack, I had it nicely clean. For me 90% clean is enough. Next up were these poorly looking brakes with all the black aluminium corrosion. But I also got these cleaned fairly well, in my opinion. So proudly I put them to the other cleaned and the new parts, a place they well deserved at that point. Next was the U-brake, WD-40 brake cleaner to the rescue. It's not only for cleaning brake surfaces, but also the brakes themselves. And then I went on with the cassette. And quickly I realized that I had to fully disassemble it to get rid of all the grease and gunk. So that's what I did. And I'm so happy that this is possible. Look at the final result. That's the part that made me the most proud of cleaning of the whole bike. So here are the parts. Only thing remaining was the crankset. And for the crankset I also took it completely apart, but before that I took a break, because even though I have only a few shots here, cleaning these parts was such a work. It was very tiring. So what did I do? I went out for pizza. Using my good old trusty less is more bike, the Wheeler. You might know it from my second video ever. So I went to my favorite pizza place in the neighborhood and relied on the good old dynamo lights on the Wheeler. Also the rain didn't hold me back from getting some nice pizzas. All the scrubbing made me very hungry. With black chili Continental folding tires, Continental Terra Trail and Terra Speed, this bike is one of my fastest bikes, even compared to road bikes. I love this less is more city cruiser. So pizza is from Tosto. Today's not sponsor of this video. One was fungi and the other one was their special one, their signature one, the Tosto. After eating I was still a bit lethargic, so I watched one of my favorite cycling YouTube videos with the guys with the most positive attitude ever. Maybe you know this video. And then I resumed working, so I took all the BioPace chain rings off from the crankset and cleaned them. And it was harder to do than I first expected. But eventually I got the job done. I also cleaned the seat post, because why not? If I clean all other parts, I should also clean this one. Still intact after 35 years. And I even brushed off the Dior crankset a bit to make it a bit more shiny, but I feel like, yeah, the result was mediocre. I think could be better. And then I put it back together while paying attention to the correct positioning of the biopaste chainrings. And I tried some more polishing of the big chainring. What do you think of the end result? I think it looks decent, doesn't it? Also 90% cleaned. I don't need 100%. This stuff is old already anyways, and it will get dirty again anyways, so I think that's fine. I shortly thought about servicing the internals of the shifters, but I didn't do it. I thought they still felt fine. And ultimately I also replaced the axle on the original front wheel, so I put back my silver polished Araya RM20 front wheel, and here you can see the original one. And at that point I was finished with fixing up all the old parts, so I started to reassemble everything. The most fun part in my opinion. What do you think? So as you can see here, I didn't film that much because I was so excited. So at this point many parts are already on the bike. We're going very fast here. Saddle is already on there, brakes, derailleurs, crankset, rear cassette, brake levers and shifters. For the U-brake in the rear I really had to read the manual because I think they're quite complicated to reassemble. More on that in the end of the video. After some additional brake, I decided to finish the project. So first up I installed the brake pads. These are the Coolstop Eagle 2 with dual compound for wet and dry conditions. Here on the U-brake. And yeah, at this point I still hadn't fully understood how the U-brake assembly works, because the right U-brake arm wasn't moving properly. In the front I installed also some Eagle 2 dual compound brake pads, and these are pre-used. Then the important decision, will I use the braided white jack wire housings? Originally the 89 Terra Runner came with white cable housings, contrasting the purple frame paint. So I thought, go as close to original as possible? Well, I mean, I was not going as original as possible in the first place with the tires and also my handlebar, so I decided some black ones will do, and they also fit the black elements in the frame, like in the frame design well, the Leo prints for example. So let me know in the comments what you think about this decision. Should I have used the white ones? Afterwards I set up the brakes, and I can mention again, I don't like cantilever brakes, especially setting them up. Maybe you can understand why. I already told you that in my Unlen 1x conversion video. I put the right brake arm in the topmost hole of the cantilever socket, and the left one I put in the middle hole. And then I put the screw here on the right side all the way in, and then in my opinion these old brakes work well and are well centered. And then the U-brake. I don't know, also a bit complicated to set up, but once these work, they are nice. So yeah, I set it up here and I think they worked properly afterwards. Then to shifting. Fiddling the cable through these MT62 shift levers is quite hard. I don't know why. I think there's no guiding inside of these housings around the levers. So what I've learned is that you have to remove this part here completely, and then you can get the cables through there more easily. So I set up the front derailleur, and maybe I'm doing something wrong here. Help me in the comments if you can. The front derailleur is so hard to push and pull from the handlebar, so from the shifter. Is this because how I mounted it there at the screw of the front derailleur? Or might this be because of the little steel plate under the shifter that might be bent the floor of these Dior thumb shifters? Would be interesting to know. Anyways, then I routed the cable for the rear derailleur. Cable has to go through the U-brake mount here, and that's quite fiddly. There we go. Finally. So, tightening this and setting the limit screws of the rear derailleur. And then the chain. And I think you saw it before, this is a very basic KMC chain for €7. It's for 7 gears and it's named Z7. So if that's not a coincidence. Yeah, and I didn't have to remove any links, it's just the perfect length in my opinion. On the missing link I put some chain oil already to have it well oiled inside of the chain links. And then I put it together. Well, sometimes I'm an idiot, I feel like. Do you also know that feeling if you have had long sessions working on your bike and you make dumb mistakes? Anyway, this mistake was fixed quickly. Then I mounted a bottle cage and my excitement for a test ride was growing and growing. Oh, but not without grips, of course. So I also mounted these €10 grips which match the color of the saddle and also the tires. I used some alcohol and of course I had to wait for some time until they were dried and wouldn't move anymore. But for a first test ride that was fine. And here you can see the bike finished and ready assembled for a first test ride. No racks and fenders so far. If you know me, you know I like to install these. This time I just wanted a basic build first and then decide later what else I would put on the bike. Oh, and by the way, the pedals. Maybe you remember they look quite rusty in the beginning. They are steel from the outside. And I brushed them off with sandpaper and then used some rust sealant, and now they look fine in my opinion. Before going for the test ride, I briefly thought about using some Velox Tresso Star to have more grip area on the handlebar, so maybe installing some in the areas close to the stem, but the colors didn't match and I didn't do it. Before I show you the test ride, here's some footage from some days afterwards. So here's something for you to learn about the U-brakes if you don't know it already. As you might be able to see here, the puller from the cables is very off. I first thought there were problems with the bolts tightening down the brake arms, but these weren't the problem. Ultimately I found out that the problem was this puller, and here you can see how I moved it to a different position, and after that it worked way better. So my learning is that the puller for the two brake arms, this little triangle if you want so, has to be as close to the bottom bracket as possible and centered. Alright, but then the first test ride. As it was dark outside when the bike was ready, it was a dark ride. But it doesn't matter. I was so excited. Write me in the comments if you know that feeling of a first ride on a self-assembled or reassembled bicycle. I think this hits differently. I really like this purple color, also with the city lights during nighttime. And these handlebars are so cruisy. These are from the Bicycle Co-op and formerly were on my Panasonic MC3500. But here they fit better because I have a longer top tube here with 60 centimeters and a long stem. Look at this purple. Let me know in the comment section, and this is my last shout out for the comment section, if you like this color. On the next day I put the most essential accessory on this bike I could imagine, the perfectly fitting bottle from Giro Bavarese 2025. And then I took the bike with me to do my commute. This bottle and paint color are a match made in heaven. And the brown colors, well, they fit the rust so perfectly. So I don't worry at all about new rust coming to this bike. As I'm making this video for you, I'm thinking about what further parts to add to this bicycle. First of all, some fenders and a kickstand, and then a rack. For this build I'm thinking of adding a front rack with a basket, so let's see. Unfortunately for fenders you can see that there's not so much space in this fork here, which is a bit unfortunate, but I will find a solution. Alright, let's end this video with some riding footage, and I hope you can enjoy the beautiful colors of the bike. As I'm riding here I want to wrap up a bit with the most important learnings from working on this bike. First, one very general thing I learned. Old bikes you see potential in are worth it. Go get them and then do the work and you will be able to enjoy them, trust me. Maybe don't buy them if there's some really red flags like dents or excessive rust, but otherwise just do it. Something a bit more specific. U-brakes are not that easy to assemble. Look at the manuals if you can still find them online to put all the bolts in the right order. And for the actuator or the cable coming from your brake levers and actuating the cable that's attached to the two brake arms, put this actuator centered and as far away from the U-brake itself as possible. Then the U-brake works great in my opinion. Yeah, and then these shift levers SL MT62. Of course they have some fame, but in my opinion the steel plates are not that nice and I find them particularly hard to shift in comparison to the higher class XT thumbies. So I would recommend always getting the XT thumbies somewhere. Just a detail I know, but for me it's a learning. Alright, and that's it for today. I hope you have liked this video and thanks a ton if you made it this far. I know that today is a bit of a longer video, so if you made it this far, please leave me a comment if you liked this longer video format or if you didn't, and this will help me plan future videos. This build just took me such a long time and I was so happy with the result that I thought, well, it deserves a longer video, and I will comment in the video on everything that I encountered throughout the build and my considerations, and my learnings. So, thanks again, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye!